This is
two sides of the debate tonight. With me in the studio is Rahul Narvekar of the Shiv Sena. Thank you very much, Rahul. Mahesh Jetpalani of the BJP joins us live from Delhi. Maheshinder Singh Grewal, advisor to Prakash Singh Badal, represents the Shiromani Akali Dal point of view, and they have been critical of this judgment. Aslam Ghoni will be joining us in some time. He's former Advocate General of Jammu and Kashmir, representing the human rights point of view. He's there, right there on your screen. Sudha Ramalingam, Advocate and Vice President of PUCL, Professor Hargopal, visiting faculty of the Bangalore National Law School. Manika Tagore represents the Congress Party on this panel. And my first question this evening on the Newshour is to KTS Tulsi. KTS Tulsi has been the lawyer who has represented Bhullar in court. And this case has now been lost. Now, Mr. Tulsi, I found it surprising that Mr. Bhullar's family says this decision is influenced by politics. People would say the delay has been influenced by politics. Had there been no politics, then it wouldn't have taken all these years.
No. Well, firstly, Arnab, I want to say that I firmly believe that the judges are invariably endowed with superior wisdom in deciding the cases correctly. My own viewpoint, we lawyers argue from the standpoint of a party, whereas they see the entire picture and therefore they take a larger decision in the larger context. So I bow to the decision. But I want to say that this is the first case in the history of the Supreme Court of India after 1950, where the Supreme Court's own judgment was split verdict. The judge who presided over the hearing of the appeal, the Justice Shah, held him to be innocent. He said that there is no evidence against him that he participated in any terrorist act. They said the only evidence against him is a confession which is extorted
by the police. So all these issues, I think, have been dealt with.
By the police.
All this has now been dealt with, sir. My question to you is, I don't want to get into the question is, do you believe that rightly the contours of the death penalty debate and what has been seen to be the bogey of human rights activists has changed after today's judgment?
No, I think that according to my limited understanding, this judgment is at variance with several other judgments which are of a larger bench. And I wish that there would be greater uniformity, there would be greater certainty, there would be a greater predictability of law, rather than deciding from case to case.
Sir, I'm sorry, you are a very eminent lawyer, and I don't want to cross swords with you, but therefore I will go to Mahesh Jetpalani. I will only like to point out to you with the greatest of respect, Mr. Tulsi, that the legality and constitutionality of the death sentence in India has been challenged a number of times. And if I'm not mistaken, Mahesh Jetpalani, the Supreme Court has upheld the principle of death sentence also on multiple occasions. I want you to come in, Mahesh Jetpalani. First counter to KTS Tulsi.
Well, the Supreme Court in Bhullar's judgment today was not concerned with the question of the constitutionality of the death penalty or the merits of Mr. Bhullar's case, albeit Mr. Tulsi is right that the Supreme Court verdict which finally held him guilty was by a 2-1 judgment. But there was also a review petition filed against that in the Supreme Court, which was dismissed by the Supreme Court itself in December 2012. The fact of the matter is the Supreme Court has still left the door open for deserving cases. They've said that the fact that there's a delay in the disposal of mercy petitions is still a ground for judicial review in the Supreme Court. You can go to the Supreme Court and say that there's been inordinate delay. It is dehumanizing to dispose of delays, to dispose of mercy petitions with delays. But it's made one very important exception in paragraph 40 of the judgment. And it has said that convicts under the TADA and similar statutes cannot avail of this benefit. They can't complain of delay in the disposal of mercy petitions. They are not deserving of such empathy. So it's closed the doors for all convicts under TADA and similar statutes.
That's the point. And that's the point I'd like to go to Professor Hargopal too, that if you look at point 40 of this judgment, it makes it very clear, and I'd like to read something out to you, Mr. Hargopal, that it says that long delay may be one of the grounds for commutation of the sentence into life imprisonment, but it cannot be invoked in cases where the person is convicted for offence under TADA. Such cases stand on an altogether different plane and cannot be compared with murders committed due to personal animosity over property and personal disputes. In other words, Professor Hargopal, it says terrorism is terrorism. Don't tell a terrorist to get leniency from the system in the way the ordinary murderer does. Your response to that, Professor Hargopal, why do you oppose it?
I think along with the Supreme Court, you have also delivered the judgment. See, the point that one has to examine is that whether the death sentence in a civilized society is permissible, and what have been the standard that India has been upholding. The same Supreme Court once said in the rarest of the rare cases, and whatever Supreme Court says, it can be legal finality. That's not a moral finality. Society will always retain its final judgment. And today, you people have created such a public opinion.
No, what is you people?
Constitutional morality is almost
no, who are you calling you people, Professor? Could you please elaborate on who are you people?
But I think the question is that whether death sentence in a civilized society is permissible, and what do we mean by progress of a civilization of a society? And when a society is progressing, I think on human rights standard, one has to judge whether the society is progressing or not. A society going in a reverse order and all compromising with all the standards of human right and lowering the standards of human right is no comment on the advancement of a democracy. I mean, that's what we have to understand. Supreme Court, yes, I mean, it has said its own wisdom, but that doesn't mean that this judgment will hold good for all centuries to come.
Well, I think it makes it very clear.
May revise the judgment.
It makes things very clear, Professor.
One thing you must understand is that when you carry a debate on the death sentence, it is the question of the human life. Terrorists or no terrorists, a society should
Professor
be free
Hargopal,
from terrorism. And if you guarantee me that terrorism will be, over by hanging 10
that is not an argument.
But are you very sure that the terrorism
No. Professor Hargopal, you are such an eminent lawyer. You are an eminent lawyer. Professor.
Responsibility for the crime.
Professor.
You are totally holding the person responsible for crime.
Professor.
But you are not holding the society responsible.
Professor.
So you have to hold. Society should take some responsibility for crime.
Professor.
Responsibility and make the individual responsible.
We have the political class which is already handling. We have the political class which is already dealing with issues regarding to terrorism with kid gloves. Now we expect the judiciary to do the same and target our country as a very soft target for terrorism. We already have the political class doing that. Let's, for heaven's sake, let's not have the judiciary following suit and doing the same. We all understand capital punishment may not be the best form of punishment in civil society.
But is that the argument?
But at the end of the day, you need to realize that terrorism is also not a common kind of crime. It's a crime of the worst order and has to be dealt with an exceptional manner. And if you really want to have a deterrent in the society, you need to deal with it as firmly as possible. And capital punishment definitely is the only source.
Professor,
you have to understand the genesis from where the whole concept of this capital punishment came over. The concept behind it is to give closure to the aggrieved and their relatives, and number two is to give a deterrent in the society so that people don't repeat these kind of heinous crimes. Now, if you take this very deterrent factor out, how are you going to have a civilized society? So let's send a message across to all those who indulge in terrorism. This will not be tolerated, and you will have to go to the gallows if you kill others.
You see, this actually, I feel, I'm sorry to say this, Professor, I have tremendous regard for you, and you are not just, an activist, but you're also an academic in law. But I'm surprised that despite your eminent qualifications, Professor, that your argument is weak in law, because the counter to the argument which you're putting that death is not a deterrence, you are fully aware, Professor Hargopal, that the Supreme Court has in the past taken this into a consideration too and held that it is not a strong enough argument to abolish the death penalty. In Maru Ram versus Union of India, Justice Faisal Ali says the mere fact that a long-term sentence, or for that matter a sentence of death, has not produced useful results cannot support the argument either for the abolition of that sentence or for reducing the sentence of life to life imprisonment or to something else. I mean, this is absolutely clear. It's written in law, so your argument doesn't hold. But I wonder if there's any other argument. Sudha Ramalingam.
No. My argument, no, please listen. My argument is that, you see, there is always a gap between the moral, morality and the legality. And the society always moves to a higher level of morality. See, you can't, say that legality is final. No society can stay.
Then let me tell you about morality.
And you will have society has to go beyond.
No, let me quote
law represents a stage of development. Law is not a finality. Law at this point of time, yes. But you mean to say that the terrorism will continue, you go on hanging people? I think terrorism should come to an end, not the, terrorists.
Here's the flip.
Promise me, or if you can guarantee that by hanging...
Mahesh Jetmalani wants to counter you. What's actually, Professor? Professor, you read...
I'm a little befuddled. I'm a little befuddled by Professor Rajgopal's statement that terrorism must come to an end, but not terrorists, because I don't know how you can have terrorism without terrorists. So will you please explain that to us?
You need not hang anyone.
No, but there was society when there was no terrorism.
Do away with terrorism.
The Indian society did not have terrorism. No, please understand that did we have terrorism till 1970s and 80s? Was there terrorism?
There's no argument there.
Of course we had terrorism in the 80s. Of course we had terrorism in the 80s. What about the Pan Am bombing? What about the Khalistan movement? That was all terrorism. We are facing terrorism right since the early 80s.
You have to go to the history.
Sir, today...
But what about 50s, 60s, 70s?
Sir, one second. Sir, you know, Professor Argopal, we have to be realistic. We have to live in the present. We have to live in the present.
There is no capital punishment.
No. We have to live in the present. And the problem is, and with great respect for the three other politicians on the panel, Maheshandra Singh Grewal and Aslam Ghoni and Manika Tagore, the problem is, Aslam Ghoni ji, that it is politicians like you who would wait for the slightest opportunity to create a debate, delay a decision, and then go crying that a decision has not been taken and hence let's ask for a commutation. It is to expose this bogey of human rights activists that the court has used such tough language today. Aslam Ghoni, this is what the court...
Yes.
You've read the judgment.
Arnab, whose fault is this? You see, this is you got to understand it, that existence of death sentence in a statute means that this is a very, very extraordinary power which state vests in itself.
Yes. So,
and this extraordinary power is defined in many judgments by the Supreme Court itself.
Yes.
And the Supreme Court has been talking about the brooding horror of a person being under the threat of the death sentence.
Sir, please don't. Sir, please.
You can see
Aslam Ghoni, the constitutional...
Your problem, Arnab, I'm sorry, you don't allow to speak.
No, I'll let you speak, but you're factually wrong.
I am stating something with greater sense of responsibility. I am not factually wrong. I am telling you that the judgment, one judgment you refer to, there are other tens of judgments of the Supreme Court where how you can say that anybody, if the president sits over deciding the mercy petition, how the convict can be held responsible for that?
So, quote the judgments.
It is not a question of
quote
yes,
the judgments.
you are right to the extent saying
quote the
that
judgments.
It's politics.
Aslam Ghoni, quote the judgments.
But in politics, you are playing with a soul.
No, quote the judgments, and I'm going to, Aslam Ghoni, quote the judgments, and for every judgment that you quote to say death penalty is illegal, I will right now on the news quote you two other judgments.